Another Mogul dissected Canadian edition. Today we have EP Taylor. His name is Edward Taylor, and let me tell you that this guy is a legend. So I'm covering lots of Canadian folks because on Wikipedia you just go from person to person, and now is Canada's time, I guess, and I will cover more British, US, and people from around the world. But it's kind of surprising to me that there's that much billionaires or interesting folks in Canada that lived before me, which is why I'm doing these editions. It's to teach you lessons by these guys. There is mad wisdom into these people. So this guy who was born in 1901, and at some point, he was Canada's richest man. He's known for thoroughbred horse racing, but in reality, he owned literally the world's largest brewery, period, in these days. And we'll get as per white. Quick hint, it's because of the prohibition, right? He was up north in Canada. Um, but yeah, very interesting man right there. Very, very successful and many, many insights to bring to you. I'm pretty sure you'll love it. So yeah, horse racing, but I don't care about horse racing. I mean, it's like a rich man's sport, and it's really not interesting for me and probably for us here. What you need to know about this guy: his grandfather was rich, and his dad as a result. So a lot of fortune, guys, is inherited. In most folks with cash nowadays, it is inherited. It is well invested, and it keeps on growing basically. So this guy is no different. He basically was in Ottawa, and he didn't really know what to do with his life, so his dad sent him to his dad, which is his grandfather, Charles McGee, a wealthy Ottawa man, and that had a profound influence on him. Okay, so like often I ask the questions to entrepreneur on my podcast, how did you got this? Well, here we have a clear cut answer. First, I guess his dad was that way. Then there's the genes, and I guess all of that was activated by the granddad that really did a good job at educating his grandchildren about the importance of wealth. He studied at McGill, which is the best university in Canada, everything considered equal. It's in Montreal. Um, the guy is really weird. We can see from the get go, like he invented an electric toaster that would toast both sides of the toast, and he would sell the patent for 40 cents on every toaster sold. So I would guess toasters would sell for like $3 back in these days, or even $1 or $2. Yeah, probably $3. So he would make like a third of that or something, a sixth or a third of that. And then he started a two vehicle bus line between Westboro and Ottawa. So he had two buses, and they literally did the back and forth. So if one failed, well, he had another. So that was his start. So he had to invest in two buses. Buses, they cost over 150K, and there's a gas, and there's like all the contracts. So pretty lean start. And back in these days, while transport was a very good business, right? Like not everyone owned cars, and for long distances it was quite advantageous. I guess he took advantage of that. His granddad died in 1918, leaving his fortune to his family, to his brother, to his daughters, and so forth. So he inherited a part of that, and I guess he did good moves with that fortune. Um, unless so, yeah. Oh, he's not self-made and so forth. Well, no, not really the importance here, because he made good moves with the money, and it being not being self-made is not this negative thing. Most of wealth comes from there, and no one is really self-made in the end when you think about it. There's your genes, there's your environment, there's your parents, there's your friends, and anyone born on this world is not self-made really, because we're put in this wonderful environment which gives us the opportunity to get there anyway. Still tons of cool lessons from this guy. His second business was a taxi company, which is somewhat similar to the bus company, right? In transportation. So that was his start. And then he developed that pattern for years that he would follow, which is to run a business for a year, make the concept obvious, and then sell it, which is a concept that I'm applying very much with my own startups. You know, me, I'm a fire starter. I'm a 0 to 1 guy, and I can hand you a one, and you can take that one to 10 million, or 100 million a year. So yeah, that is pretty cool right there. Some of these concepts, guys, that we take, oh, we're geniuses, we're reinventing the wheel. Well, we're not. You know, like people did it before us. If and it, only if we study these folks, we could get these lessons early. And trust me, there's like even better lessons to come in that one. Um, the guy decided to start investing in breweries. Okay, um, alcohol, guys. Well, alcohol was still or let's call it breweries or good beers. It was somewhat not a novel thing, but producing good beer at scale and bottle it and everything that comes with it was somewhat novel, somewhat a good opportunities. um, the even more novel thing in this case was to take all of these breweries and unite them together. That was his genius. It was mostly financial genius and pure business acumen right there. Um, why would you do that? Well, because of scale, you know, because of logistics, because of sharing SOPs with all the breweries, and operationalizing the whole system there, making it a system and scaling it, and talking from a bird's eye level, an eagle's eye, having a full view on your empire and controlling the thing. Most importantly, control monopoly. That is really important in these days. There weren't much laws, you know. So you will see later on that the guy controlled like literally 60% of the market. But at first, it was not that way. It went really bad for him. He suffered a lot, and which is a team with like all great entrepreneurs, right? He had 12 million in sales on assets of 24 million. So imagine that. Imagine just the cost of running like assets of 24 millions, you know? So that must have been quite painful for a while. There was a prohibition at that time as well. And the guy had businesses in the US, you know, in Canada and US were somewhat tight in these days. So that must have been hard too. Um, so yeah, he acquired like he literally had 70% of the volume of beer sold in Ontario, which is completely ridiculous, right? Like at best, nowadays companies have like 10-15% market share at best, you know, nowadays 70%. I mean, he controlled the thing. When you control market, you can do pretty much whatever you want. You can control the marketing, you can control the buying decision, you know, like people don't have much choice. Your product is so good that yeah, you just like make them buy again and again and again. The stock market crash of 1929, so the guy was still writing checks, basically somewhat like not like a VC but more like a private equity firm, and he stopped doing that and he focused on the breweries. So that is also a theme in life, guys. In entrepreneur life, when we hit rough patches, whether it is because of COVID, whether it is because of inflation, tough decisions need to be made. And these decisions, they shape us for the years to come. Most of these decisions, if you're smart, you're gonna focus on to one thing. You're gonna cut some of your, you're gonna throw some of these baskets and the eggs inside them, and you're gonna focus on your main eggs. And that's what the guy did. So yeah, he had 500K to invest, which is yeah, probably like 50 mil back in these days, and he did a deal. By so Dominion Bank, which was the largest bank at this time, sold him a bunch of breweries, and basically the deal was 600K. So I guess he found another 100K, which is another 15 mil, repairable at 100 million per year. So yeah, that is yeah, literally like okay, and pay back 10 million a year, you know, which is, well, in his case, I guess it was somewhat normal, but it's somewhat of an innovative deal, but it's quite risky as well. mean, these terms you don't see them often nowadays. Good and bad, I guess. So he merged a bunch of breweries together, and he literally became the world's largest brewing company. How about that for a title? The largest brewing company in the world. Yeah, that is quite impressive right there. And according to him, he was trading pieces of paper for other pieces of paper. Which what he means by that, I love the simplification here and the jokes behind it, because obviously that was really freaking stressful for him. But he traded money for shares, basically. Um, he was acquiring shares. He was trading liquidity for non-liquidity, but that non-liquidity would become massive, massive, massive liquidity in the future. So that was his bet. That was the bet of his lifetime. That is what made him hyper rich. Um, he was so cash poor that a legend had him passing check back and forth between two bank accounts in Montreal and Toronto. So yeah, the guy was going through some mad crunch times back in these days, period of hectic finance, but his liquidity situation is after prohibition. So, what you also need to know, guys, there is that this guy also probably profited massively in 34 ish, when the prohibition ended in the US. So, yeah, that right there, that is a big trend, you know. So not only he made the bet, um, by the way, I do think it was an educated bet. It's just like weed in Canada, you know. People that made this bet, the Miron guy and the other guy, I forgot his name, the guys behind the Exocorp company. Well, they exited $1 billion startup. Each of them made at least 100 mil from that, just because they could predict that, you know, marijuana would be legalized. So always look for trends, make big bets, and then be patient. You know, manage your stress. That is the formula right there. So another thing that I thought was pretty cool that he did, he fired the old school runners. So the guys that actually took some of the company's alcohol and bootlegged it to other folks, and he replaced them with salesmen who are encouraged to become communities leaders. So I'm not talking necessarily ethics there. I'm just talking like, yo, let's clean this up. You know, I'm acquiring operations. Some stuff is not working. I have some tough decisions to make. Get out of my way. You know, I have this vision, and I'm going to chop you off, you know, and I'm going to replace you with folks that are going to drive the company up and up and up, you know, not folks that are going to profit from it, which is most humans, by the way. So I guess he did a good decisions there. He also, when he acquired all these breweries, most of them were doing soft drinks, one of which is obviously quite popular in Canada. My dad loves Orange Crush, so he's the guy behind it, I guess. Built his little food empire, and then guess what? World War II starts. So he's like, oh man. But then another trend that you'll often see with these moguls is that they profit from war. They're not idiots, you know. Like they judoka everything. They take every single negative thing and turn it for them. Everything, even the war, you know. So for the war, he quote unquote volunteered to help the government of Canada to fight the war. Um, and obviously he would gain from that. He came close to losing his life when his dumbass was traveling in 1940 and his ship was torpedoed. So not a good move, Mr. Taylor. But yeah, he survived that, so he was rescued. And like, yeah, like moguls are mortals, you know, like they can die too. They can make bad decisions. You only need one bad decision to have yourself sink. Um, During wartime, he became internationally connected with top businessmen around the world, so that's a huge advantage right there. Um, that at that time, I guess he became one of the richest men, especially post Second World War, was just like a humongous economic boom. So again, his net worth and assets would exponentially grow. And yeah, again, quoting him, I simply own the largest piece of the largest piece. Um, so yeah, another thing that I wanted to mention here, yeah, that I forgot to in the war is that yeah, Mackenzie King apparently wanted alcohol and beer to just stop during the war. Beer drinking and advertising. So and the guy obviously fought against that. And actually, I think people would drink even more. Well, first men were at work, women were at home, but people at home they were kind of stressed, so I guess they were drinking. And so yeah, the guy didn't want that to stop. Just to tell you that it's not like, oh, it's charitable stuff. No, he has business interest in doing that. The guy traveled extensively, which is another team that you'll see amongst Mogul. They're internationally connected. Their world is their playground. It's not only their country. They really have relationships all around the world, and their world is their playground. The guy regularly did this trip: Cleveland to New York, to Montreal, and then back to Toronto. So he did like that little loop there, a little circle. Um, so that is to note. They're always traveling, always on the move. Really value this time. 15 minutes interval meeting. That's not invented by Calendly agency owners or SaaS owners. People were doing it before that. He valued his energy. I always mention that on my LinkedIn. He valued his energy. Thinks in time in terms of energy, not really in terms of time, but energy. And time is energy in some point. Um, he valued judgment and the ability to get along with others. One saying that the genius more trouble than he's worth. Yes, because genius, especially if they're kind of hermits, they can't communicate their vision with the rest of the team. They can slow down pretty much everyone. They can be very egotistic. So yeah, fully understand him for that. He formed the exclusive gated community of Lyford Cay in the Bahamas. So that's interesting. It's like a little mastermind. It's like a little community in which you mingle with other rich folks. And guess what? He traveled. He spent most of his life in Bahamas because yeah, like rich people, they travel, they get different experiences, and their world is their playground. And that was for tax reasons, apart from the warm climate. I wanted to highlight this part because the Power Corporation, the Desmarais family, I'm going to cover them. They're the richest folks in Canada, or were for quite some time. So he became the target of a takeover by them. Just to tell you that in this world, guys, there's always if you're a shark, there's a megalodon that can eat you. So you can even if you're the richest, you can be a target of a takeover by an upcoming more fitter male, um, fitter competitor. So this right here, I just wanted to mention his exit, quote unquote, which his main liquidity came in 1976. Obviously, was already rich, but he sold his 10% shares, um, actually voting share. But yeah, he also exited his money shared, and he must have had an exit of at least 300 to 500 million, something like that. And then he dedicated himself to horses, which, I mean, yeah, not in my interest, but royal stayed at his house, his estate. So the Princess Diana and Prince Charles, um, he was friends with President John F. Kennedy and a bunch of other prominent folks. So that's this legend of a man right there. E.P. Taylor, what a legend. Edward Plunket Taylor.